This is Akashavani Mangaluru. Dear listeners, in today's Talk in English program now, we will listen to Dr. Rajesh Acharya H., Assistant Professor, School of Humanities, Social Sciences and Management, National Institute of Technology, Karnataka, NITK Surathkal, speaking on the theme Determinants of Household Energy Choice, Status so far and Way Ahead.
The inability of households to avail reliable and adequate amounts of modern energy resources to satisfy their domestic needs is one of the serious developmental challenges faced by the world today. It is called energy poverty in the context of developing countries and fuel poverty in the case of developed countries. The distinction lies in what causes this inability. In developed countries, it is due to affordability and efficiency problems. But in developing countries, it's a very complex problem arising out of different reasons. The socio-economic determinants of energy poverty vary across regions, countries, and cultures. Therefore, energy poverty is regarded as a multi-dimensional problem determined by several factors such as lower income, higher energy prices, lack of access, housing conditions, quality and efficiency of the service, regional climatic differences, demographic composition of the population, gender, caste, culture, and many other reasons. Every walk of life today is directly or indirectly linked with use of modern energy resources, and access to energy is indispensable to improve human well-being. For example, electricity is necessity to lead a life of contentment today. Access to electricity for lighting can lead to better education outcomes. Children will be able to study under lights at night, and schools will be able to provide conducive learning environment. Electricity can lead to better health outcomes as healthcare providers can store critical medicines in refrigerators and conduct diagnostic tests. Access to electricity can also lead to better employment opportunities by encouraging entrepreneurship and small industries. With greater female education, for example, fertility may decline and well-being of female and households may improve. The provision of quality healthcare could prevent infant mortality rates as well. The indoor pollution caused by biomass kills millions of people today, especially women, every year. It can be drastically reduced with the expansion of access to clean energy services. Due to gender roles in household activities, women share more responsibility in food preparation. Women also spend more time in collecting cooking fuel like firewood, dung cake, and other resources. Using LPG leads to less time for cooking and provides more time for taking gainful employment opportunities outside of the household. Economic freedom for women can enhance the overall well-being of the family. Considering the importance of access to cleaner cooking and lighting fuel in enhancing quality of life, United Nations came out with the concept of Sustainable Development Goals in 2015 to be achieved by 2030. Among 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the 7th goal is related to energy. It states that access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all by 2030. It shows the global commitment to ensure clean cooking and lighting fuel for all. Further, access to energy is instrumental to achieve most of other sustainable development goals like eradication of poverty and hunger, gender justice, sanitation, and other goals. An understanding of these dependencies is crucial for their achievement as well as the overall well-being. Burning of biomass emits greenhouse gases and contribute to climate change. It can be reduced with the provision of clean energy services. Sustainability of the planet and life without severe climatic conditions like cold, drought, deluge, etc. is undoubtedly a primary factor for ensuring well-being. Finally, provision of reliable energy services is crucial for the survival of the people in the advanced countries to protect them from severe cold and in developing countries from severe heat. Thus, modern energy resources have a overarching importance in shaping the life of people for better with enhanced well-being and capability. India made considerable progress in ensuring access to electricity and LPG in the last 20 years. However, there is a significant difference between the two. The government claims that 100% of the villages are connected with the grid electricity. But this does not mean that all households have electricity connection. Household level data shows that over 90% of the households have access to electricity. But there is also extensive use of kerosene for lighting. It is called as energy stacking, which means a household uses more than one fuel for the same purpose. As a positive sign, India is slowly reducing energy stacking for lighting year after year. It means that more and more households are using electricity as only fuel for lighting. India has about 70% access to LPG as a fuel for cooking, but around 40% of the households use LPG as only source of cooking fuel. It shows that a substantial percent of households, particularly in the rural areas, don't have access to LPG. They also use biomass like firewood, dung cake, or crop residue for cooking in spite of having access to LPG. Sometimes households use biomass to cook certain types of dishes as a matter of practice. For example, in the rural coastal part of Karnataka, it is quite common to use firewood to prepare boiled rice in spite of having access to LPG. With reference to cooking, India is entering the stacking phase in sharp contrast to electricity, where India is withdrawing from stacking. It shows that LPG access lags behind electricity considerably. Given the developmental significance of modern energy sources, the identification of energy choice behavior of households is crucial for policy development and its successful implementation for several reasons. First, mere access to modern energy will not serve developmental purposes as long as households simultaneously use traditional polluting fuels such as firewood, kerosene, along with modern fuels. Households may be forced to use traditional polluting fuels despite access to modern fuels if they cannot afford them, or if the supply of modern fuels is not reliable, or if culture, habits, and tradition will determine the use of biomass. From a policy perspective, it is important to understand household energy choices. If the problem is access to energy resources, investing in energy infrastructure will solve the problem. If affordability is a problem, a price-based measure like giving subsidy should solve the problem. But Indian energy choice is very complex. Along with access and affordability, a host of socio-economic factors influence energy choice. Therefore, achieving Sustainable Development Goal 7 needs rather a holistic approach. For using electricity as a choice for lighting, the income of the households plays a significant role. Higher income households are more likely to use electricity as only fuel for lighting. Access to information and communication positively affects electricity access. Further, if a woman has a say in the household decision making, or if a woman is a household head, such households are more likely to use electricity as only fuel for lighting. For using LPG as only source for cooking fuel, household size negatively affects choosing LPG. If there are more people in a household, then food needs to be prepared in large quantities, which requires more LPG. It compels the households to use firewood or other forms of biomass. If a household is rearing livestock like cow, buffalo, sheep, goat, etc., they are more likely to use dung cake due to easy availability of dung. A major determinant is energy to total expenditure ratio, that is, if a household spends greater percent of its income on energy sources, such households are more likely to use biomass. Apart from this, educated households are more likely to use LPG, and households belonging to socially marginalized groups like scheduled castes or scheduled tribes are also more likely to use biomass. Both central and state governments have attempted to address the issue of energy poverty. To enhance electricity access, the central government has launched a program called Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Jyoti Yojana, mainly targeting villages which lack access. At the same time, the state government of Karnataka has implemented the scheme which provides free electricity up to 200 units per household, subjecting to few restrictions. To enhance the LPG access, the central government has launched Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, mainly targeting women. There is also a program called Unnat Chula Yojana, which provides for efficient biomass stoves for households. There is also a subsidy for LPG cylinder. Policies have recognized the importance of access, particularly in rural areas. Further, the issue of affordability is also addressed through the pricing of energy resources. For example, household price per unit of electricity is the lowest, and subsidy to LPG also addresses affordability issue. The role of women is considered by providing LPG connection in the name of women under Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. Energy stacking for cooking is addressed by the Unnat Chula Yojana. All these policy interventions show that government at multiple levels understand energy poverty. All these policy interventions show that governments at multiple levels understand energy poverty problem fairly well. However, there is a need to recognize the role of education and affordability issues, particularly in the case of LPG. Since the use of traditional fuels is closely associated with culture and tradition of people, mere access to modern fuels will not encourage people to discard traditional fuels. Sustained campaigns to discourage the use of inefficient energy sources should be initiated in an integrated manner involving relevant ministries such as Ministry of Health, Rural Development, Women and Child Development, along with the involvement of local bodies at the grassroots level. Since the LPG subsidy was removed during COVID-19 pandemic, it puts an extra burden on poor households. It is good to see that the central government has announced its LPG subsidy recently. It's a policy in the right direction. Further, going forward, there is also need to make subsidy reach the most needy. The choice of energy by households is a reflection of overall development of the economy. For example, poor households, daily wage workers, and socially marginalized groups like Dalits and Adivasis still heavily depend on use of traditional energy sources. Therefore, the energy policy of the government, instead of dealing with energy sector in silos, must be a part of a larger developmental agenda of the country. Such an approach shall improve people's standard of living so that they can reduce their reliance on traditional fuels and their negative consequences. Therefore, the future energy poverty alleviation policies need to see it as a larger developmental issue rather than looking at problems of access or affordability alone. Overall, there is a need for a big push to enhance LPG use, particularly in rural areas. Since India committed to net zero emissions by 2070, pushing for cleaner fuels for cooking and lighting can go a long way in achieving the same.
Dear listeners, that was the talk, Determinants of Household Energy Choice, Status So Far and Way Ahead, delivered by Dr. Rajesh Acharya H. This talk came to you from the studios of Akashvani Mangaluru.